Hi, everyone. I'm so excited for today's episode with Tiara Schuster. Today's discussion will be all about self care. We will discuss things like practicing gratitude, silencing the unhealthy voices inside of us, and make sure that we know exactly who is on our team. I have loved getting to know Tara over the past 2 years, and I know you will too. Welcome to Small Steps, Big Change, the podcast where we meet extraordinary people who have used small steps to help create big change. I'm your host, Drew Sullivan. In August of 2020, after years of alcohol and cocaine use, I hit rock bottom. I knew at this moment that I had no choice but to get sober. Through lots of hard work and dedication, I made that a reality. I have to admit, I thought that this would fix everything and that a life filled with happiness would just follow. But sobriety was only the first step for me. I had to be sober before I was ever going to rebuild my life and recover all that was lost. I kept going, focusing on the next right move, or as I call it, the next small step. I then took the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. Every day is a journey for me, and I now believe that I'm in the middle of the most beautiful recovery story of all time. What I have learned is that my story has a lot in common with anyone looking to make big changes in their life. That's why it is time that we work together to make big things happen. Each week on this podcast, I will introduce you to a friend who has used small steps to help create their big change. We are all going through something, and it is my goal that by sharing our stories and bringing vulnerability and empathy to the forefront, we can learn from each other and take the small steps that are needed to create big change. Once best known as the executive in charge of the Emmy and Peabody Award-winning show Key and Peele, Tiara Schuster turned her struggle with chronic anxiety and depression into a best-selling book and a mission to help others. Her humorous takes on taking charge of one's mental health, always backed by empowering action steps, have won praise from readers ranging from Wharton professor Adam Grant to Academy Award winner Angelica Houston and best-selling author Glennon Doyle. In Style, People Magazine, Cosmopolitan, Goodreads, Buzzfeed, Goop, and many others have chosen her memoir as one of the best books of 2020, a year we will never forget. Hi, Tara.
Hi, Drew.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for the warm introduction.
Absolutely. And I feel like we saw each other 2 weeks ago, which we did
We sure did.
at the greatest place on earth, which I think is super cool too.
To Epcot. There was a speaking engagement at Disney World, and so we spent the day at Epcot. It was an epic adventure, I have to say.
And hot.
And hot, epic and hot, really hot.
Totally. Super, super hot. Well, I wanted to first talk a little bit about, because this is something that fascinated me when we were actually together in Disney World, was that I don't think I truly understood how your childhood impacted your journey. Can you share a little bit about that and that time in your life?
Yeah, it's really evolved as I've gotten further away from that Google Doc that you mentioned that was the inspiration for the first book. Because now I've done so much healing that looking back, I'm like, wow, that was terrible. It was just as terrible as I thought it was. I grew up in a neglectful, psychologically abusive house where things came to die. All the pets, all of the plants, the orchid that came free with purchase of the house, it all died. And in that environment, looking back, even after writing the book, I realized, wow, I wasn't ever hugged. I wasn't given safety. That house was treacherous and always under construction with animals dying. I wasn't given any guidelines as to like how to be a person, values, principles, not even something basic like sharing is a good thing. I was privileged in that I always had food to eat, and I always had a roof over my head, but I was not parented. And now, after I've spent the past decade reparenting myself, writing about reparenting, helping others reparent themselves and bring self-care to them, only now do I really understand the full extent of the suffering that I kind of went through. And it feels like I want to tell everybody that because I think sometimes people think it would be easier if they ignore their problems, that taking full responsibility is going to be this horrible, heinous thing and so overwhelming. And can you even really do it? And on the other side, I can say being responsible for my life is so much easier and joyful and pleasurable than when I wasn't, when I was living under my life and was ruled by all this neglect and the anxiety that came from it and the depression that came from it and the feeling that I was worthless. Because if you boil it all down, I came out of my childhood thinking I was worthless, and that's a terrible way to live. And everything else I've done has been to get me back to a place where I'm like, oh no, I'm a human. I'm worthwhile. I deserve to be treated with respect. So it took me a long time to get to this place. Now that I'm here, I'm like, whoa, that was bad. Like, that was really bad.
Totally. I loved how you said that you felt you were living under your life. Because one thing that I say in my story, and I think something that I believe just in general around overcoming adversity or moving past through that dark time, regardless, is that you have to have that full reckoning with what was wrong. And then truly that is what you stand on to rebuild your life, is that dark time. And so I find it so interesting that you said you felt like you were living under your life. And the way that and I think many people look at, moving through the dark times is to have that big reckoning and really get through what is going on and what is holding you back or what is that trauma. And that is the foundation that we restart our life on. And so I feel like with you, assuming that's similar in that same sense, it's like you went from living underneath it to now standing on top of it and really grabbing it in a way in which you could kind of form your own voice in that story.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like my life was being done to me, and almost every impulse I had was a reaction to trauma, not a declaration of who I was, because I had no idea who I was. I had no idea what I wanted. It was all just reactive to the past. And it wasn't until I really healed, and healing is a lifelong process. It's not done. I'm just on the road of it. I'm further down the road than I was 10 years ago, blessedly, but I know I've got more to go. But I see that I am solidly making choices from the person I am, which I now know who I am, and I can make choices from who I am, and I'm living on top of my life. I'm directing it. I love this term self-leadership. I'm leading myself as opposed to being led by trauma, anxiety, and depression. And it's just a way easier way to live ultimately. It takes work, but then once you're there, it's like all the windows blow open because you realize, oh, not everything is a struggle even. Like, things were very catastrophic for me for a very long time. And now they've really settled down, and it's because I've settled down.
Yeah, totally. So do you think you noticed any of those signs as a kid? I mean, was there anything that made you feel as if, Susie down the street doesn't have that problem? Or, John that is in my science class, he shared this moment with his mom or with his aunt the other day, and it was just so loving and so kind. And I don't have that in my life.
Yeah, there were only two things that really stuck out to me, which is one, social services was always being called to my school to interview me. So I noticed that other people weren't getting that. And looking back, it must have been that people perhaps close to my parents were like leaving tips that things were not okay. But because I lived in a pretty affluent house where everything looked somewhat like a lawyer and a doctor, nobody took any further look at what was happening there. So that was one thing. I just remember being called to the principal's office in elementary school for these social service meetings. And then the second was actually ninth grade, a new school. And we're about to go on a camping trip for all the freshmen to get to know each other. And I saw a dad hug his daughter in this really casual, just loving way. And I realized I've never been hugged. Like, whoa, dads do that? They touch their daughter? That in particular really blew my mind. And I didn't even fully understand how much I wasn't given any kind of physical affection until now. But that moment really stuck out as like, huh, weird. I don't have that at all.
Yeah. So you left your house broken. You didn't really know you were broken, I guess. You kind of just thought, oh, this is how it is. And with these little glimpses of what society is, for the most part, I guess we could say, or we don't know those statistics, but what it should be and what love should feel like. And you've had a couple glimpses of that. And you landed Comedy Central and you have the opportunities that you did. How did that come to be? Tell us a little bit of kind of that part of your journey and how you at least were able to find that outlet to, I'm sure, in a way, subconsciously release a lot of your trauma without you even knowing that it was kind of driving probably your humor and different things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think in order to kind of escape the chaos of my house, I was always good at school. I think people have one of two reactions. Like, one is they just go down the trauma hole even further. They end up with other kinds of vices, or they cling to any adult figure they can find. And thank God I was clinging to any adult figure. And so I was always hustling for my worth, getting external validation. I was always really, really good at school. So by the time I got to Comedy Central, I was really good at work and really bad at life. And I thought that the work would save me, that I'd be validated if I just climbed up this ladder fast enough, if I just got this promotion, if I just got this raise, then I'd be happy and secure and feel worthwhile. And I mean, obviously, that's always a false promise, but the need to prove myself and to prove that I was worthwhile to other people, that catapulted me through Comedy Central. Didn't feel good to my soul, hustling like that didn't feel awesome, but it was definitely filling a void.
Yeah. And sometimes I think having a big career, especially at a young age, can be very detrimental when you are struggling with something internal or something that is really maybe bold and strong in your soul, but that you haven't seen yet. How do you think you normalized that chaos and kind of put a band-aid over it? And how did you sustain that for so long?
Oh, it was just miserable. I mean, it was not fun. I mean, basically what I would do is I was addicted to weed. So I would hustle, hustle, hustle at work, get 10 out of 10 panic, anxiety, stressed all day long, crying in the personal phone call room, having these weird meltdowns and breakdowns and not noticing, none of my friends are crying every single day at work. This is odd. These were frequent panic attacks. I just didn't show them to any of my colleagues. Like, I was very good at covering things up because I'd had to be my whole life, to deny that my parents were neglectful, to pretend that things were okay. And so it was horrible, and I'd come home and I would just smoke weed to numb out or drink or get into bad relationships, but I couldn't be still. The moment I was still, I had to numb out. It had to be work, 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 totally numbed out. Work, 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 totally numbed out. I did not feel present. I didn't feel like I was living again. I felt like I was under my life and just all of this was happening to me.
Interesting. So rock bottom moments. I've had one that's a big part of my catapult into the world that I am still searching for and that I've been able to find my peace and my joy and what makes my heart tick. They're now my favorite moments, right? Because I believe that they are the moments I go back to whenever I feel strong and whenever I feel successful, because it's nice to look back at where you were. But they're also the places I go to when I feel the most weak. And as I said before, I stand on them today. Can you tell us about your rock bottom moment and when you drunk dialed your therapist and just what were the days that followed that brought you to this point?
Yeah. I mean, I was out of control. I was in control at work, out of control outside of the office. Looking back, I just would drink to such excess that I was constantly sick. I was talking to one of my best friends this weekend. I'm like, whoa, in college, I really was throwing up like once a week, right? And she was like, more than that. It really took a while to realize, like, wait a minute, not everybody's throwing up all the time due to alcohol. But at that point in my life, I was 25, living in New York. I had just gone through a really terrible breakup that had triggered all of my abandonment fears and all of my neglect fears. I was a wreck. And for me, I have flirted with suicidal ideation my whole life. And unfortunately, that was one of those moments where I thought it would be better to be dead than to be alive. And I was so drunk that I just unleashed on my therapist's voicemail that I really wanted to hurt myself. And she tried to find me. She called and left me voice messages. So the next morning, when I looked at my phone, I was like, huh, weird. Why do I have all these voicemails from my therapist? And then playing them back, I realized, oh my God, I drunk dialed my therapist. I threatened to hurt myself. And now she, this perma calm European woman, who's always drinking tea with a little scarf around her neck, like picture of calm, was desperately trying to find me. And it was so shameful. That moment is like when the record scratches, like, wait, do I want to be the kind of person who's threatening her life and who's this out of control? And I just had to really choose that morning. If I don't save my life, there's not going to be much more of a life to live. And it was really like that simple, that morning, my friends had been encouraging me. Sounds so stupid, but to start journaling. They were trying to get me to do anything to help my mental health. One of them had given me the book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which is a fantastic book about creativity. But one of the tools in it is journaling. And I just decided, I don't believe in journaling. I don't believe in any of this. It's all super woo-woo, but I got to try something. That was sort of the rock bottom moment for me, was being so out of control, having no recollection of it, and just realizing this is really serious. That was the first moment. I was like, oh my God, this is really serious. My life is in danger. I guess I'll try journaling. Like, that sounds stupid, but I guess I'll try it. I actually have my journal. I was teaching a workshop last night and I showed them my journal, my bright yellow journal from 10 years ago. But writing it down saved my life. Step one was just writing the narrative down.
Yeah, that's helped me a lot too in kind of my own story and in my own recovery, has been able to put things down. It's not that whole idea of you put it in writing, it means it's real and it's said, but it's more that idea of you are consciously writing out your words. And there isn't that subconscious of just typing, typing, typing like we're so used to, but you're actually seeing in front of you, or you're kind of formulating those thoughts to understand, like, what is that next thing I'm going to put on that piece of paper? And there's, I think, a lot more mindfulness there. And it's something that I think can allow you to think in ways that, sometimes that automatic way of typing something or just speaking something out, that we don't always retain it as much too. And I think
Totally.
that's where I see it as something that's helped me too. And we're going to get into some of those rituals. I want to ask about rituals from a macro lens and kind of just in general. How important is the consistency in your rituals and kind of, I guess, your consistency overall? Because one thing that I've known to be true for my own story was that consistency was the number one first thing that really started the way in which I saw my recovery being successful. And I knew that consistent small steps was the only way that I was going to be able to make lasting change in my life that was going to impact me in a positive way. And I remember a few times with my own bouts of sobriety and how I just, you get so complacent and you think like, oh, I can do this. And you do it for a month, 2 months. And then that work event comes around and that colleague that doesn't know your story asks you if you want a glass of wine. And then you feel that you can't exist at that event without having one. And I remember those moments so clearly because they ended my sobriety in those moments. And of course, hindsight's 2020. I look back and I say, well, I was getting sober for all the wrong reasons there. But when it comes to the consistency around your rituals and kind of just that mindfulness practice that you put into play, how important was that for you to make sure that no matter what was going on with your day, no matter what kind of day you had ahead with your workload at Comedy Central, or that girls trip that you had coming up with your college friends because someone was getting married. Like, how important was the consistency? And I guess how important is it even still now?
And it's everything. The consistency is the ritual. Doesn't necessarily matter what ritual, what self-care rituals you're including in your life. It's that you're building structure for yourself and you're honoring yourself by saying, I'm worth time, whether it's meditation or journaling or swimming or whatever it is that you're doing for your own mental and emotional health. By declaring every single day, I am worth this amount of time. This is important to me, and I do what's important to me. You are building resilience. You are building self-respect. You are building self-esteem. And so whatever ritual it is that you're choosing, I always say to people, if you want to start running, obviously don't start with a marathon because I love you, but you're probably not going to achieve it. And then you'll just feel bad and shameful that you didn't get this big goal. So what about you ran to the stop sign down the street 2 times this week? Micro, micro, micro goals. The first book that I wrote, and I just wrote a second, I can't think of it as a book. Like if I think of it as a book, it's overwhelming. There's no way I can do that. I'm going to be under that book. But if I think about it as one essay, one chapter at a time, that I can do. I can write one essay at a time. And so I often really advise people who are building their rituals, choose rituals that are nourishing, that are actual self-care, that are not like a day at the spa. While nice is a really commercial, not feeding of the soul. I mean, I love the spa and I'll go anytime, I'm not kidding on it. But what are the things that are going to help you respect yourself? What are the things that are going to help you nurture yourself? And then what's the smallest possible baby step to begin that process and to stay consistent and just to set yourself up for success by keeping the stakes very, very low? Just really that stop sign example comes from my own life, which was when I started running, my only goal was to get from my apartment down to the stop sign that was by the Hudson River. It was like maybe 4 blocks. That was it. Every time I did it, it was like, high five. Yes, I rock. That built into, okay, I could go a little further. Okay, do a little more. 10 years later, I'm a serious runner, but I would have never become that had I not started super, super small and super consistently.
Wow. I mean, I think that is a parallel to your story in general. Same with mine. And I think, it's interesting. And I think it was either you or Glennon Doyle who you're in conversation with at that event where you said it's not always about the activity or it's not always about that object. Well, it's definitely not about that object, but it's more to question about. And I think in this instance, it's working kind of the reverse effect. You know what you're trying to accomplish, which is to clear the fog, right? And to clear the clouds and to have that bright sunny day. But it's thinking about how do we get there and what can I do in my physical life to create the structure, the accountability, the consistency to keep going there. And I think the example that was used when we were in Orlando was more around that sometimes people get too obsessed with the physical object or the physical situation and they lose sight of, or they don't even know what is the
Yeah.
reason behind it. And so I think that one thing that I've tried to do in my own journey, and it seems as you have with yours, is that you look at physical rituals or physical things as more kind of just, they are a surrogate for that deeper impact that you're trying to accomplish or gain. And they're just kind of that moment, but they're not the lesson behind it.
Yeah. It's kind of honoring the mind body connection that, like, if you told me, just feel more grateful, you've got a lot to be grateful, feel more grateful. I can't do that. I don't know how to just feel more grateful. But in writing, I have to write a gratitude list every day for a month. Oh, I can build up gratitude. Now I see what that feels like. I really, really loathe self-help books that are just like, feel joy, be present. I'm like, cool, who can just do that? I can't just do that. So I really have to find activities things that are physical, where I have to use my body, where I have to be present, I find those activities that are going to give me these, just as you said, like these bigger, deeper lessons. And most of the time it's really fun. Like running now is fun and helps me a great deal with my anxiety. That's like a very natural, I call it nature's Xanax, is like a nice sweaty run. So it seems stupid to have cute sneakers and a cute outfit to go for this run, but the run is like essential to my whole mental health. And it's also just being playful about it. One thing I really say to readers is don't beat yourself up if you miss a self-care ritual. That is not why you started self-care. It was not to find another reason to criticize yourself. It's okay. Begin again tomorrow. Blessedly, right in this moment, there's a tomorrow. So like, take that. Don't worry about today. Just, oh my God, if you wake up again tomorrow, then you have another opportunity to start again.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, because I think that we all start our days with saying today is the only day that matters because yesterday is already gone and tomorrow we don't know what's going to come.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting, and I love that you said that if you do have that small mishap, and again, it's different in whatever you're going through. Some small mishaps can be big mishaps, but it doesn't really matter because you kind of can flip that same narrative that you use at the beginning of the day. When you say today's the day that matters, yesterday's already happened and tomorrow we don't know. And it's your way of basically saying that halfway through the day, whenever that mishap is, you can also flip that narrative and say, okay, well, that's already happened and tomorrow we have to look forward to. And that's truly all that you have. And I find that so amazing that you have the ability to flip it like that, because I think that we all put our best foot forward, but there comes a point where you have to stop beating yourself up over those small lapses in judgment or skipping a step or just not thinking the best way that you can in that moment and say, okay, I'll get it next time and move forward instead of falling back, maybe potentially regressing.
I mean, this took me 10 years. This did not happen overnight. It took 2 books, 10 years, hundreds of hours of meditation. I mean, my whole career is now this. I had to switch careers into this sort of mental health advocacy and just figuring out how to stay stable. I'd also say to people, I truly, truly hated myself. I was miserable. I hated everything about me. I had no other voice other than constant looping criticism. Nothing else existed within me. I had to go down to the bottom of my soul, save the little girl, little bright light soul that was there, pull her up to the surface, and then parent her for 10 years to get to the place where sometimes when I make a mistake, I don't care. Like, it doesn't work all the time, but sometimes. And that took a lot of work. And I guess I just want people to know that the work is so worth it. So much happier now and able to help other people because I'm not ashamed of myself. I'm not really worried about what other people think about me anymore.
Totally. And you say that help other people. I love knowing the responsibility we hold. I always say that in my job. And obviously, that's how we know each other. And I always say I have a responsibility to share other people's stories because of the position I have. But I think our number one responsibility is to share our own story. And that doesn't mean that, you're very open and through 2 books and a lot of public facing work have that open book feel. I too, in my world, have an open book feel and have no problem sharing the truth and the journey I've been through. I heard a quote that you said in an interview, and I'm going to read it real quick because I love it so much. You said, "It is my job and responsibility to help other people that have a job or a platform. And why wouldn't I? When I help someone else, I get to be a part of their success story." That's dope as fuck. Okay, so I'll put that there.
That is relevant.
About your mentors and kind of just how people were able to be that storyteller for you early on in your journey and kind of how that has helped you kind of understand the responsibility you hold now that you're starting to see so much more consistency in your light moments than your dark moments.
It's funny. I just actually jotted down, there's like a phrase that I always use, which is, I want to be a part of your success story. That's the only reason I help anyone is because I was so alone for so much of my early life that connection, that's my drug of choice now. My healthy drug of choice is to connect with people. So when I help you, if I can set you up for success and you do succeed in some way that's meaningful to you, I am a part of that thread. Like I am woven into that. And then I can't ever get lost or forgotten because I'm a part of someone else's story. So that's how it works for me. That's why I spend a lot of time trying to help other people, whether it's through the book or through workshops or through somebody has just reached out to me on Instagram and I'm going to send them like a voice memo of just support. Truly, I want to live forever through everyone else. And that's how I look at it. And I didn't have a strong mentor at Comedy Central or high school. I never had somebody who took me aside and helped me other than authors and books. Nora Ephron was super influential, and Steve Martin and Adam Grant. Actually, right after I graduated from college, I started reading his work. And I was so blown away by, he has a book called Originals, which is about creativity. And that book was such a solace, mostly because it said, you don't have to throw caution to the wind to be creative. You can take baby steps. I was like, oh my God. And so I just started reaching out to people whose books I had read. And I randomly reached out to Adam Grant. Like I found somebody who had been a student of his many years ago and I got an intro. And then I just kept it up and cut to, now where I can ask him for advice on the road, like advice about speaking or books or, whatever it is. But what I have found is that if you approach somebody who you think is really cool and that you'd like to learn from, if you have done your research about them, if you know their story inside out and now you've got questions and you're really respectful, most people are going to help you because people love telling their own stories. They love being connected to other people. That's been my experience. The fancier the person I'm reaching out to, weirdly, the better chance I have of them saying yes, because usually they're so secure in themselves. There's no competition. They just want to help. They've already made it to such a degree, which is amazing because then you have this new contact. And then always being there for them. I would do anything. If Adam needed something, it's drop it all. How can I help? How can I be of service? And that's definitely a question that I lead with, which is how can I be of service and trying to be the person that I would want. Who would I want right now? And can I be that person?
I love that. I want to talk about a couple of your rituals because I just find them to be so fascinating. And the entire process of it, I've read Lily's twice and I've been able to, I think on the second time around, start to feel it a lot more. And I think the first time around, I was not where I was at on my own story and my own journey. And I think now reading it a second time, I was in a place where I was able and capable to put some of these ideas and the things that have worked for you into practice and adapt them to the way I need to do those things. And so I feel as if some of them are definitely self-explanatory. Others are really daunting, and not as much daunting as they are more the idea behind them makes you question, is that really going to work for me? Or is that really going to be something that helps me? And you are so true to your word and authentic and real and really, stand by these. So I want to just ask you about a few of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be the best at the worst. Start where you are.
Yeah. So that comes from, I was working at the Daily Show. I was an intern, a very, very lowly intern. And my mind was blown by the Daily Show. I had gone to Brown for playwriting. Then I had come to New York and realized, oh my God, playwriting isn't really a career. I need to find something else to do. Or it's a very tough career where you're going to need a job that actually makes money for a considerable amount of time. And so a friend had just said, why don't you look into TV? Once I got to the Daily Show, I was like, oh my God, this is so close to a play. You're in a black box. You've got scripts, you've got a director, the lighting, everything. I'm like, okay, I get this. This is a version of theater. And I really just wanted to be a part of it. I really, really wanted to help. But the other kids were like, being stand-up comedians in the hallway and, trying to get discovered, which I thought was so weird. And so it was in a meeting with Jon Stewart where he was giving advice to us interns. Someone asked, what was your first big break? And he really quickly was like, there are no big breaks. There are just a series of tiny, small breaks. And your job is to work your hardest at each one of them. And that really set off a light bulb in my head of like, oh my God, this is my tiny break. I'm here at the Daily Show, I'm at a place that I really like. What could be my tiny break in here? And I noticed that the capsule coffee machine was always broken, or there's no water in it, or there were no capsules. And Jon Stewart made his own coffee. And it was like annoying that he'd see that it was like gross. And I thought, haha, that's going to be my small break, because that is a very small thing in his life that I know I can make better. I know I can contribute to that. And yeah, it's not writing the TV show, but every little thing does matter. And so I just started approaching everything that way. What if I'm the best at this job that nobody else wants? What if I prove on a work project I'm going to go above and beyond on mundane thing that nobody cares about, but that is really important for the whole group? It was a lot less ego. It was a lot less finding the fanciest thing that would get me the most attention, and a lot more, what's the stuff that is being avoided and ignored where I can stand out and be helpful. And I have never stopped doing that. Even now on something like when I'm doing a speaking engagement, Drew, like I go into research mode. These questions are going to be the best. I am going to over deliver every question, every little thing where I can do it with excellence. I try. And when I fail, because you can't always live that way, that's fine. And to avoid kind of failing, quote unquote, I just take on less. I take on as much as I can do with excellence and then try not to do much more. So I always start where I am, because the big book or having your own TV show or whatever, those things seem so big and overwhelming and like I could never achieve them. But cleaning the coffee machine, doing a good job on these questions, question by question, oh, I can totally do that.
It's interesting you say that, because there's a quote by MLK where he says, not everyone can be famous, but everyone can be great, right? Because greatness is not determined by fame.
Right.
Greatness is determined by service. And so if you are great at what you are doing, that's all that matters. And it doesn't matter if you're the janitor or if you're the executive at Comedy Central or if you are just on after school pickup. If you do it great, that's where your fulfillment comes in. And I think that's where the impact comes in, but not only for the people you're serving or the people that you're working with, but also for yourself. Because when we're complete, and when we feel good about ourselves, and feeling good is what, like any human, we like it when people say to us, that looks nice on you, or you did a really good job with this assignment, or wow, you parked in that spot perfect. It's like, okay, that can go a long way in building up our agility to be able to handle those bigger things.
And that, I know that if nobody else knows, I know that I went above and beyond on these questions. I know it. I'm constantly proving to myself, my own self-esteem is the most important thing to me. It's really one of the pillars is understanding where I get my self-esteem from and making sure it's unshakable and untakeawayable, which means—
Say that again, where you get your self-esteem from.
So I have to make sure that where I get my self-esteem from is unshakable and untakeawayable, meaning it cannot be tied to anything external. So for me, that's writing, using my human body, and being a reasonably kind person. But they do not depend on anyone other than me. So writing, it's not the success of writing. It's not how many books I've sold. It's, did I show up to the page today? Did I do the thing I know is in my heart? Was I honest with myself? It's about showing up, using my human body. It's not about losing weight. It's not about being toned. It's not about any of those things. Like, I think it's really cool that I have a body. I love the way it feels when I'm exercising. Did I do it today? And being a reasonably kind human, It's not, does somebody ask me to be their bridesmaid? Does somebody tell me I'm such a good friend? It's, if I'm honest, did I show up today in a kind way? And I don't beat myself up. Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes I am not kind. And that's not something to like rake myself over the coals about. It's to say, I wonder how I can show up and do this a little better tomorrow, because this is where my worth comes from, is these things I have decided that nobody can take away from me. And that's a huge game changer. When you become the person who owns your self-esteem, oh boy, you can do so much more than you ever thought you could, because it erases a lot of the insecurity. It's like your rock in the storm is your self-esteem.
Totally. You talk about hype men, road warriors, and those we must avoid. Know your team.
Yeah.
I could not agree more. And I would love to hear how that is a ritual.
Yeah. So for a very long time, I looked for external validation. If you hear me so passionate about self-esteem, it's because I've lived on the opposite shore of that. I've lived, everyone else's approval was the most important thing. I need other people to like me. And so at Brown, when I was in the playwriting program, I was always trying to impress the fanciest possible professor, the fanciest possible visiting director, as opposed to the teachers who really took me seriously and helped with my craft. Like I was always trying to impress somebody who didn't really care about me. And you do that enough times and you realize, oh, that's just that archetype of me wanting prestige, somebody else to like put their shine on me. And it's never going to work. It hasn't worked now. It's never going to work in the future. And so I keep lists of when I have a new idea. Do I show it to, we've got these 3 categories, to a hype man that's just someone in my life who is always encouraging. We have those friends who are just like, you've got this, you can do it. So I know at a glance who on my team is going to hype me up. I've got my road warriors. Those are people who have done something similar or would have some good advice and who are not threatened by me. And I'm really honest with myself about when I asked for help last time, were they on it or were they like weirdly dismissive? Like what really happened? And then I have my absolutely not, do not contact this person. Don't try to prove yourself by having them accept you. Because I think a lot of us have those people who we think if only we get X to think we're good, then we'll be good. And if you're honest and ask yourself, who are those people? Write it down on a piece of paper. You see like, aha, if I keep going to these people, I'm just going to be miserable. Like it hasn't worked in the past. It's not going to work in the future. But by really clearly on pen and paper, seeing it, I've saved myself so much agita and heartache around my work and projects.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of whispers that sometimes we don't address in ways that we should. And I think that we ignore them. I feel that I have that, and I've had it with my recovery has been, you have people that are there for, that validation and can give you that encouragement. And then there are people that, you can really get down and dirty with, and people that are going to be honest with you, but are also going to have your best interest at heart. And then there are those people too that just withdraw from your life. They're never making deposits. They're never coming in. I always say that I give friends about $25 in the bank, or people in my life, colleagues, friends, family, even too. And you get that little bit of kind of extra, right? Like I'm giving you that starting balance. And I am a constant depositor. That's just who I am. I mean, there's that combination of people pleasing, but then there's that combination of generosity. And then I think there's now that aspect of gratitude. And so I'm constantly making deposits. And I think I need to be more open to making withdrawals and knowing that when you're making deposits, you can also ask of your tribe. But I also think that we're constantly trying to see the idea of who is in our life and what value do they bring. And I think sometimes we miss the people that are just making withdrawals from us and they're not making deposits. And they don't have to be physical deposits. They can be exactly what you said, that listening ear, that trust, that person that's not going to judge you for that bad thing that happened. But then there are those people that sometimes we go to, that frenemy within, that is telling you, oh, that person, you want to go ask them what their opinion is here, but you know that they're going to give you negative advice or they're going to guide you down that wrong path. And sometimes until you know that you really have to own your tribe and really be, they say in Invictus, you have to be the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. Like until you're in that space, you do carry people on your ship that are just withdrawing from your life. And they're sometimes harder to get rid of, but sometimes easier to bring in than those that actually bring value.
Yeah. I mean, until you get straight with yourself about what you deserve and what you're worth, you're bringing in exactly how worthy you think you are. So that's attracting people who take, like, if you're not guarding your energy, why would anyone else? It's all just sort of common sense, but it takes so much work to get to that even place of, I've got these friends who are sucking the life out of me and who every time I come to they're negative. Maybe I should stop going to them. Like exactly what you said.
Awesome. This next section is the takeaway 10. So it's 10 questions. You have up to a minute to answer each question. So, what always makes you laugh?
Key and Peele sketches always make me laugh. That's what I go to.
If you could ask one person one question, who would it be and what would you ask?
Ooh. I would ask, it would be Nora Ephron. So I'd raise her from the dead. And I would ask her, can you help me figure out my trajectory? I have all these things that I love to do. Can you help me build what is the web of it? Can you see something with your Nora Ephron Saint vision that I can't see?
What advice do you have for young people entering the workplace?
That's a good one. Be kind. All this stuff is work. You know what I mean? When I've seen some people really elbow one another at the beginning of their careers and take things so seriously and worry about everything. I'm not saying don't work hard. In fact, I think that goes without saying that people need to work hard. I strongly believe in paying your dues at the bottom, no matter who you are. But the competitive, I'm going to win at the cost of other people, that isn't really helpful. And as you get older and you look back, kindness matters more and more and more. And the earlier you can instill kindness as a part of every facet of your life. I'm a competitive person in terms of writing. I do want the book to do well, right? I do want when I go speak, I want to be like the best speaker they've ever heard, but it's never at the expense of somebody else. There's nobody I'm trying to cut down. And so as soon as you can start to cultivate that my success doesn't have to be at the expense of someone else, it can just be, and we can both be successful. I think you give yourself such a gift because then people want to help you. People don't want to help the jerk, obviously, but they do want to help the person who's just like kind and helpful.
How should we measure our lives? In years, moments, accomplishments? At this point, like, what do you think is the strongest way you can measure your life at this time?
I'm kind of torn between relationships, the depth of my relationships and the love that I have, and experiences. Some of the things that stick out in my mind the most are when I went on an adventure and I did something outside of my comfort zone. And those are like the cool markers of my life. So I can't choose between the two. It'd be relationships and experiences.
No matter how much you discover more about yourself and identify things you may want to try to change, what is one thing you will never change about yourself?
That I love jewelry. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with like rhinestones and glitter and super girly pink things. I love that. I loved Pretty Princess as a kid. I refuse to give it up. I don't care. And I'm going to hang on to it.
Which three people, past or present, would you invite to a dinner party?
Hmm. Coco Chanel, because I need to get real with her on her involvement in World War II. I need to know. I love your handbags. You're an icon. You did a lot for women in business. Really, what was going on in World War II? So she's going to be at this dinner. I'm going to have maybe Carl Sagan at this dinner to teach me about the universe, to facilitate a conversation about the universe. And then the third person, I kind of want it to be like a musician to bring a very different perspective. Like, I'd love to hear from Jeff Tweedy. He's had such an expansive career. He's such a creator. I would just love to hear about his process and about how he looks at the world.
I love that. How do you define a community, and are you part of one?
I don't know how to define it, but I know how it feels. I definitely have a community. I feel like I'm in many, many communities, and community is actually my antidote to depression. It's always to connect back to people. It's like the first thing I don't want to do when I'm depressed, and it's the first thing I must do when I'm depressed. And recently, because of the book's success, this community has sprung up around me of other people who are interested in healing, who want to take the time to care for themselves and care for their own communities. And so I've just been exposed to like all these cool people in a world that, feeling grimmer and grimmer and bad things are happening. I've seen like some real beauty in this community. So that feeling is like one of love and acceptance. And it's so weird. You read the comments on my Instagram and people are just like, good work. They don't know each other, but they're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Good work. Ooh, I love that. Sorry that you went through that. It's a really like uplifting group, probably because they're self-selecting. You don't follow me if you're like down on life and pessimistic and hopeless. I'm more of an optimist and someone who's just really trying. I'm trying really hard. So other people who are trying hard tend to come to me.
I love that. You're not the bottom line on ESPN telling us the score, right? You have to be looking to not only ingest your information, but digest that information and spread it to the world. And I think that takes a certain type of tribe member to be a part of that. Have you ever looked in the mirror and not recognized the person staring back?
Yes. When I hit rock bottom, my 25th birthday, it's not quite a mirror, but I took a lot of drunk selfies that night. Those pictures, I don't recognize that person today. That feels miles and miles away from who I am and who I was at my core.
Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of like you did a selfie mugshot. Last question. What are you grateful for in this moment?
Well, this will sound cheesy, but I'm very grateful for you. And I'm grateful for this journey that we're both on, and that through our mutual work together, we're able to reach people, hopefully be a friend they didn't have, the friend they didn't know they needed, or simply a witness to like their life and like present with people. And so I'm really grateful for the opportunity to get to be a part of this.
Awesome. Well, how can people find you, follow you, stay up to date with all things Tara Schuster?
Well, you can find me on Instagram, just my name, Tara Schuster, Instagram, easy, or anywhere books are sold. The title of the book is Buy Yourself the Effing Release. Yeah, those are the two best places to find me, Instagram and the book.
And they can text, right? To be a part of your newsletter?
To be a part of my newsletter, which I every week have, it's either amusing, like a very short thing about what's on my mind, or a self-care tool. It's usually like quick and easy, free self-care tool. You can get it by texting GLOW, GLOW, to 66866. So just text GLOW, GLOW, to 66866. And you'll get the newsletter, which is my pride and joy. It comes out every Friday.
Well, I am so grateful that you spent some time with us today and talking about the small steps that have been able to help you really find this new change and clarity in your life. And I'm so personally grateful that you're in my life. And I know the world is so grateful that you're in theirs. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Small Steps, Big Change podcast. I hope that this episode inspired you to let go of whatever is holding you back and take the first small step. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, follow our YouTube channel, the Small Steps, Big Change podcast, and connect with me on Instagram. Remember, no matter what you are going through, without taking small steps, you are limiting your potential to create big change. So take that first small step today. I promise you that you won't regret it.